The mashed potatoes were still steaming when I made the mistake of speaking. "I can't wait for our cruise next month," I said with a smile, hoping to finally feel included. Rebecca snorted. "Oh, you thought you were coming?" Dad chuckled, shaking his head. "It's for real, family, Allie." They're forced to smile and kept chewing. I'd spent hours organizing their perfect cruise. They'd used my employee discount, my time, my connections, and now they were laughing in my face. I quietly cleared the plates, pretending not to care. But inside, I was already planning something they'd never forget. What they didn't know, every reservation, every booking, every confirmation, they were all in my name. And in less than 3 weeks, they'd discover exactly what that meant. After a lifetime of being the overlooked daughter, I was finally done playing along. This time, they would remember my name. My name is Allison Morgan. I'm 28 years old, live in a modest one-bedroom apartment in Boston, and work as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized travel agency downtown. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. I paid my way through college, working 2 jobs while studying, and graduated with a degree in marketing and only minimal student loans. No one in my family came to my graduation. My mom said, "We already knew you'd pass." That's always been the dynamic. I'm the dependable one, the invisible one. I remember birthdays. I bring dishes to family dinners. I send thank you notes. But somehow, I'm never enough. My older sister Rebecca is 32. She's always been the golden child. She dropped out of 3 different college programs, wrecked 2 cars, both paid for by Dad, and has never held a job longer than 6 months. Last year she crashed her latest car while texting and driving. Dad helped with most of the down payment on the new one. Mom still shops for her like she's a teenager. Rebecca is entitled, loud, and cruel when she wants to be. But she's also charming when it benefits her. My parents eat it up. Then there's Kyle, my brother. He's 30 and works for Dad's construction company. He got the job without an interview or qualifications. Kyle isn't malicious like Rebecca, but he doesn't stand up to her either. He usually stays quiet and goes with the flow. He'll text me when he needs financial advice or relationship help, then turn around and ignore me when we're all together. He knows siding with Rebecca keeps him in good standing, and that's what matters most in my family, maintaining the illusion. Growing up, my straight A's were expected. Rebecca's C's got pizza nights and balloons. Kyle scored a single touchdown in high school football and got a framed photo in the living room. My academic medals are in a box somewhere in the attic. Despite it all, I kept showing up. For holidays, for birthdays, for Sunday dinners. I kept hoping they'd see me, that maybe this time I'd be included. Maybe this time I'd feel like a real part of the family. So when Dad announced at a barbecue 6 weeks ago that he was planning a 7-day Caribbean cruise to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary, I was genuinely excited. For once, it sounded like a family trip we could all enjoy together. I even offered to help with the bookings through my travel agency, knowing my employee discount could shave hundreds off the price. Dad lit up. He was thrilled. I spent hours of my personal time researching options, coordinating cabins, and upgrading excursions. My boss even gave me special approval to extend perks normally reserved for my own travel. We talked about it constantly over the next few weeks. Who'd be in which room, what excursions they were excited for, whether Rebecca would survive snorkeling without breaking a nail. At no point did anyone hint I wasn't included. Not once. I was the point person, the organizer, the one making everything happen. I was proud of how smoothly it was coming together. For once, I felt like I belonged. I thought this cruise was going to be the moment things finally changed. That maybe, just maybe, this time I'd be treated like family, not just the one who made things easier for everyone else. I was wrong. So very wrong. Sunday dinner started like any other. I arrived at 5 p.m. sharp, a bottle of expensive Cabernet in hand. A splurge for me, nearly $100, but I wanted it to pair with Mom's pot roast. Their house looked just as I remembered. Perfect hedges outside, cluttered with porcelain figurines and family photos inside. I noticed again how few of those photos included me. "You're just in time," Mom called from the kitchen. "Rebecca and Kyle are already here." Rebecca was stretched across the couch, scrolling through her phone. Kyle was watching a basketball game, barely acknowledging me. "Hey, Allie," he mumbled without looking up. Rebecca barely raised her eyes. "Nice of you to finally show up. I was exactly on time." But I let it go. "I brought wine," I said, heading to the kitchen. Dinner started out pleasantly. Dad carved the roast, Mom beamed over her garlic mashed potatoes, and I poured wine for everyone. Conversation bounced between Kyle's new girlfriend, Rebecca's latest haircut, and neighborhood gossip. Then Mom turned to me. "So, Allie, how's work?" It was my opening. "Busy, but I'm excited for the cruise next month," I said. "I've been researching snorkeling spots in Grand Cayman. The coral reef preservation area is supposed to be amazing." Silence. Then Rebecca snorted. "Oh, you thought you were coming?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "What?" I asked. She exchanged a look with Kyle, who suddenly found his potatoes fascinating. Dad set down his glass and chuckled. "It's for real family, Allie. You know, the 4 of us." The 4 of them, not 5. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. "But I've been helping with all the bookings. We talked about the excursions together." We needed your discount," Rebecca said, like it was obvious. "That's why we had you make the arrangements." Mom shifted in her seat but said nothing. Kyle stayed quiet. I stared at all of them. "Did you seriously think you were invited?" Rebecca asked, laughing now. "God, that's sad." Dad joined in her laughter. "You really saved us a bundle, though." "Appreciate it." I felt like I'd been slapped. The room started to blur. My ears rang, but somehow I smiled. "Could you pass the green beans?" I asked. My voice sounded steady. "I don't know how." Dinner continued. They talked about packing, weather forecasts, and who would watch the mail. I chewed mechanically, tasting nothing. When it ended, I stood and started clearing plates. "Leave those, honey," Mom said. "You've worked all day." "It's fine," I replied. I needed something to do, something to hide behind. In the kitchen, the sound of running water covered my shaky breath. I could still hear them in the dining room, planning a vacation I wasn't part of. I drove home in silence. No music, no podcast, just the sound of betrayal echoing in my chest. The tears didn't come until I locked my apartment door. I slid to the floor and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. I cried for every year I'd spent trying to belong. But somewhere in the ache, something else emerged. Not just pain, resolve. The next morning, I woke up with puffy eyes and a pounding headache. I stared at the ceiling, unable to move. My stomach ached from the night before, but not from food. It was the kind of ache that came from humiliation, from knowing you'd been used and discarded like a tool. For the first time in 3 years, I called in sick to work. My boss sounded surprised, but told me to rest. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Thanks for the wine last night. Your father really enjoyed it." That was it. No mention of the dinner, no apology, no acknowledgement of the moment that shattered me. Just another dismissal, another casual erasure. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a mug of coffee, and sat down in front of my laptop. The cruise booking tab was still open. I stared at it. Then something clicked. Every single reservation, every cabin, excursion, dinner seating, it was all booked under my account protection. Every confirmation email had come through my account. I was the primary contact for the entire trip. They had laughed in my face, called me not real family, and yet the whole trip depended on me. I began reading the cruise line's cancellation and modification policies. As an employee, I had access to back-end systems most customers didn't. I could change names, shift dates, pause payments, all without alerting anyone, so long as it was done before final confirmation. I didn't need to confuse. That would be too obvious. I needed to confuse, disrupt, real rain. I requested 2 weeks of personal leave, citing a mental health break. My boss approved it immediately. Then I booked a remote cabin in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. No Wi-Fi, minimal service, complete seclusion. I scheduled email autoresponders and drafted text messages to send while I was away. It would look like I was simply unplugging, taking a break. Nothing suspicious. Next, I created a separate email account and rerouted all cruise updates to it. That meant any confirmation emails, notifications, or reminders would go to me, and only me. My father wouldn't know if the dates changed, or if his credit card hit a snag. He wouldn't even know there was a problem until it was too late. I didn't act out of impulse. I didn't scream or send angry messages. I took my time. Every detail I planned was deliberate and quiet, and with each step, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. Not fear, not desperation, not the aching need to be included. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to their cruelty. I was responding with power. I wasn't asking to be seen. I was showing them what it looked like when the invisible daughter finally stopped playing along. This time, they would learn what it meant to exclude the one person who held the keys to their perfect little vacation. The cabin was even more perfect than I imagined. Tucked into the pine-covered hills of the White Mountains, it was quiet, secluded, and just remote enough to feel untouchable. A retired park ranger named Bill handed me the keys and warned, "Cell service is spotty up here." That was exactly what I needed. The night before their departure, I lit a fire in the stone fireplace and cooked myself a simple dinner: pan-seared trout, roasted potatoes, and sautéed greens. It wasn't fancy, but it felt grounding. I spent the evening journaling by candlelight, writing down everything I never had the courage to say out loud. The silence was healing. There were no footsteps upstairs, no television blaring, no voices ignoring me, just trees, wind, and the occasional sound of an owl in the distance. The next morning, I brewed a cup of coffee and stepped onto the porch just as the sun started rising over the ridge. It cast a golden glow across the valley, peaceful and unreal. I pulled out my phone, turned it on, and waited. Within minutes, the messages started pouring in. "Rebecca, what the hell is going on?" Kyle. "Allie, the cruise line says our reservation is scheduled for tomorrow, not today." Mom. "Sweetheart, something's wrong with the flights. We've been standing at the check-in counter for almost an hour." Then came Rebecca again. "Did you do this? Tell me you didn't screw this up on purpose." Dad was silent, but I knew that silence. It was the kind that boiled behind the eyes, controlled, simmering rage. I refreshed the chat, watching the chaos unfold. The airline had no record of their tickets for today. The cruise reservation had been moved by 1 day. The credit card on file had been flagged for verification. Every detail was technically still in place, just slightly off. Enough to trigger panic. Enough to wreck the carefully curated timeline they had trusted me to build. More texts followed, rapid and breathless. "Kyle, have you talked to the travel agency? Can you fix this?" "Rebecca, answer your phone. Answer me. I swear if this was some petty revenge stunt..." "Mom, we're all worried about you. Please call us." I stayed silent. I sat on the porch swing with my coffee and watched the clouds roll in over the mountaintops. They were unraveling, and for once, it wasn't me trying to patch it all back together. It was them, trying to figure out how it fell apart, without the one person who'd always held the threads. As the messages became more frantic, I thought about all the years I'd been quietly left out. The time I worked late on Christmas Eve, only to come home and find out they'd exchanged gifts without me. The spontaneous lake trip on my birthday. The family photos I wasn't in. The birthdays they forgot. The calls they didn't return. This wasn't cruelty, It was correction. A long overdue reckoning. I didn't respond to the voicemails. I didn't reply to the texts. I let them pile up like all the times I sat in silence, ignored. Only this time, it was their silence that begged for attention. Rebecca accused me of sabotage. Kyle pleaded for help. Mom tried to sound concerned. Dad said nothing. But I breathed deeply and let the mountain air fill my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt like I mattered. Not because they said so, but because I finally believed it myself. By noon, the group chat had turned into a battlefield. Kyle posted a picture of the cruise terminal empty, the ship already departed. Rebecca added a blurry selfie, standing beside their suitcases in the airport, mascara smudged, her expression furious. Mom's eyes were red in the background. Dad's face was bright red, fists clenched as he argued with someone at the counter. They'd missed the departure completely. Another message came through. Kyle, we tried rebooking flights, but everything is overbooked. We're stuck at a hotel tonight. Dad's furious. Rebecca, this is going to cost thousands, Allie. Thousands. Do you even care what you've done? I sat on the porch of my cabin, watching a squirrel dart across the clearing, my phone buzzing in my hand. I sipped wine and watched the group chat unravel. No responses, just observation. Every message was more panicked than the last. The airline had charged extra for missed connections. The cruise line refused to refund because the ship had departed. They tried blaming the travel agency, but without my authorization, there was nothing anyone could do. I had already called my supervisor before taking leave, explaining I'd be out of contact, and no one else was allowed to access the reservation due to privacy policy. Even if my father called the agency and demanded changes, they wouldn't give him anything. It was all under my account. Rebecca's tone shifted by evening. You had a breakdown, didn't you? You snapped. You need help, Allie. This isn't normal. You need therapy. Kyle, in a private message, was different. If this was your way of telling us how you feel, I'm sorry. We didn't know how bad it was. My mom, as usual, tried to smooth things over. Please call me, sweetheart. Your father's very upset. If we said something that hurt you, we didn't mean to. It was Dad who finally texted, short and sharp. When I find you, we're going to have a serious conversation about what you've done. I read it twice. Not a threat, exactly. Just the kind of tone he always used when control slipped from his hands. But I wasn't scared. He had no legal ground. I hadn't canceled anything. I had stolen anything. I had simply changed what I was in charge of. For once, I used the same system they'd always used against me to their advantage, at my expense. But this time, I turned it around. I turned my phone off again and went for a walk in the woods, letting the silence cleanse me. A week later, I returned to Boston. I walked into the office, refreshed, focused. Diane, my boss, pulled me aside. You look different. Happy. I needed the time, I said simply. Back at my desk, I saw dozens of unread messages still sitting in my inbox. I deleted most of them without reading, but Kyle's message stayed in my mind. 3 days later, he texted again. Coffee? Just the two of us? I agreed. We met at a small cafe near my apartment. When he walked in, he looked tired, older, but there was something in his expression that felt genuine. He ordered my drink without asking. Oat milk latte, light foam, and slid it across the table. He said, rubbing the back of his neck. That was intense. Which part? I asked. The dinner or the fallout? He smiled weakly. Both. He didn't dodge or make excuses. Look, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. You were always the one who held things together. And we took advantage of that. I did. We all did. His apology hit me harder than I expected. Thank you for saying that, I said. I'm not asking you to forget, but I want to do better. I mean that. I nodded. I believed him. And for the first time, I started to think maybe something could be rebuilt. Not the way it was, but something new, something better. On my terms. A week after I returned to Boston, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. I made your favorite lemon bars today. Thought of you. Hope you're okay. It was short, soft, and carefully non-committal. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. But it was a peace offering in its own way. I replied with a simple, "Thank you," and left it at that. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I also wasn't looking to escalate. Meanwhile, Rebecca had taken her anger to social media. She posted a filtered photo of herself with a caption that read, "Sometimes the people you call family are the ones who hurt you the most." Another one said, "Blood doesn't always mean loyalty." She never mentioned my name, but the message was clear. Her followers chimed in with sympathy, and some of our extended family began to notice. A few days later, I received an email from my father's sister, Aunt Judith. "Allie, I don't know the full story, and I don't need to, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Your cousin showed me Rebecca's posts, and I saw some red flags. Just know you're not alone." I hadn't spoken to Aunt Judith in years, but her message made me tear up. Someone had noticed. Someone believed me without needing every detail. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself torn. My family's big holiday gathering was always at my parents' house, full of aunts, uncles, cousins, and loud conversations. Part of me wanted to go, to reclaim my space. The other part wanted to disappear for the weekend. I vented about it to my friend Sarah over dinner one night. She listened quietly, then said, "You don't need to go for them. But if you do go for you. Set your truth. Say what you need to say. Let them decide what they do with it." That night, I stayed up late writing an email to my parents. I didn't accuse, insult, or attack. I just told the truth. About the years of feeling invisible, of being expected to give without ever receiving. I told them how that cruise dinner broke something in me, how it wasn't just about the trip, but a lifetime of being treated like I didn't belong. I ended the message by saying I wasn't looking for grand gestures, just honesty, respect, and change. 2 days later, my mom called. Her voice trembled. "Allie, I've been thinking about everything you wrote. I talked to your father. He's processing, but we're both listening. We'd like to invite you to dinner. Not a holiday party, just us. Just to talk." I hesitated. Then I said, yes. That Sunday, I pulled into their driveway with no idea what to expect. The porch light was on. Mom opened the door and hugged me without saying a word. Inside, Dad was sitting in his recliner. He didn't get up, but he nodded. "Glad you came." Kyle was already there, and when I walked in, he smiled and said, "Took some guts. I'm proud of you." The air was heavy with tension, but there was no sarcasm, no dismissiveness. As we sat down, I finally spoke. I said what I had rehearsed so many times. I told them I didn't want to be the family fixer anymore. I told them I was done with begging for attention, done with pretending their behavior hadn't hurt me. And this time, they didn't deflect. They didn't laugh. They just listened. I didn't leave that dinner feeling magically healed, but I did leave with something new. Not their validation, my own. I had spoken my truth. I had set my terms, and, for the first time, they had heard me. Easter dinner came with soft sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of ham and lemon glaze wafting through the house. It had been months since the cruise that never was, and everything felt different, even the walls. For the first time, there were new family photos hanging in the hallway, and this time, I was in them. Not cropped out, not hidden in the back. Front and center, smiling, a visible part of the family. I helped Mom in the kitchen, kneading dough for rolls while she stirred the gravy. She asked about work, about my latest project at the agency, even offered to come visit my apartment soon. It was small talk, but it was also real effort. She was showing up in ways she never had before. Kyle had become a steady presence in my life. He called every other week, just to check in, sometimes invited me to lunch or to tag along to his softball games. The dynamic had shifted. He no longer just came to me when he needed something. He was building something more equal, more authentic. Rebecca was still Rebecca, but even she was beginning to shift. As I brought a pie to the table, she leaned in and whispered, "Okay, real talk. How did you pull off that cruise switch? I mean, respect." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it wasn't snide either. I just smiled. Trade secret. She rolled her eyes, but there was no bite in it this time. Dinner went smoothly. The conversation was warm, and for once, not dominated by her stories or interruptions. When Dad stood to carve the ham, he looked around the table, cleared his throat, and said something no one expected. "Before we dig in, I want to say something. Allison, I wasn't fair to you, for a long time. I didn't say it then, but I'm saying it now. We're planning another cruise," he added, Thanksgiving. "This time, we want you to help plan it, not because of discounts, because you're part of it. If you want to..." I looked around the table. For the first time, it didn't feel like I was being offered scraps. I nodded. "I like that. But this time, it wasn't about approval. It was about choice. My choice. Things weren't perfect. They were still learning. But so was I. I no longer twisted myself into someone more likable, more useful, more invisible. I spoke when I needed to. I said no when I meant it. And I didn't wait for permission to take up space. The biggest change wasn't them. It was me. I had spent most of my life trying to be good enough for a family that never saw me clearly. Now, I saw myself, and I refused to let anyone dim that again. The real victory wasn't in revenge. It was in rising. And this time, I was standing tall. Have you ever been treated like an outsider in your own family? Like your presence was expected but never truly valued? Have you watched siblings celebrated for half the effort while you gave everything and got silence in return? Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't a dramatic confrontation. It's quiet, calculated, rooted in years of being overlooked, unheard, and unappreciated. Allison's story reminds us that you don't owe your loyalty to people who use you. That setting boundaries isn't an act of rebellion. It's self-respect. Her decision to reroute the cruise wasn't about causing chaos. It was about forcing her family to sit in the discomfort they'd created, to see what life looked like without her holding it all together. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply stopped making herself smaller to fit inside the space they allowed her. And in doing so, she became something they could no longer ignore. This wasn't about punishment. It was about power, reclaiming it, and finally stepping into her worth without asking for permission. So here's our question to you. Have you ever stood up to someone who made you feel like you didn't matter? Have you ever chosen yourself, even when it meant walking away? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your story. And if Allison's strength moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of transformation, justice, and fierce women who refuse to stay silent. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. You deserve a seat at the table, always.